So you like Vinland Saga?
I love Vinland Saga.
Vinland Saga is incredible.
Amazing.
We talked. You did an interview with the author of it.
Yeah.
Is that the right term? Or
the author. Yeah,
mangaka, author.
The mangaka. And it's really interesting what he told you, especially because like the first season was sick.
Yeah.
And the second season is just like all about farming for some reason. And then you're like, what
it's
the fuck?
about farming. It's more.
it's the majority of it.
But it's not about just farming. What's actually really interesting about that is in the second season, there are very clear class dynamics at play, like class in the Marxian sense, where the indentured servants, the slaves, right, are undermined by the peasants. Even though the owner of the farm is very nice to the slaves in comparison to how mean he could be technically, and this might change, but this is as far as I've seen so far in the second season, and I didn't read it, so I don't know. But there's a moment where Thorfinn is talking to the other slave, and the other slave is like, these peasants, they're bullying us, but they don't realize that like they're in the same position. They own no land, but the reason why they're doing this to us, the reason why they're like stealing our food or undermining us or not giving us horses and whatnot, is because it makes them feel like they have some kind of lordship over us. And that is at the heart of literal like that's the class position that many people have. It's very important in like the civil rights movement in America. It's very important in like the Reconstruction era politics in America, in the aftermath of the abolition of slavery, where like newly freed black people started recognizing that they had exactly the same class position as the laymen, the people that were wage slaves, right? That
wage slaves?
Wage slavery is like what it's considered. I think like originally in the Republican Party in America, which is now a very different Republican Party, started off with wanting to abolish slavery, chattel slavery in the South and wage slavery in the North. Like that was their credo. But
I've
basically,
never heard that term before.
No, I mean,
I've only ever heard that online. People saying derogatory towards people who just work normal jobs.
No, I mean,
you look at McDonald's, you're a wage slave.
Well, yeah, they do use it as a derogatory term, but yeah, that's at the heart of like class politics. So there's no way that dude wrote that on accident.
No, I for sure.
Into that.
I mean, Vinland Saga is very. I mean, it tries to keep very anime, but does.
Go ahead, tell me it's not political.
No, it's extremely political. It's super political.
I mean, okay, so when you say it's political, do you think it's just exploring political ideas, or do you think are you saying that there's an agenda that he's trying to like portray in this story?
I don't think it's nefarious. I think that people have worldviews that they inevitably bake into their art. You know what I mean? And I think like his worldview, from what you've told me, especially like he's like a pacifist, humanitarian kind of guy.
I mean, for once, I actually have a source because I talked to the fucking source.
Making the fuck up.
I am not making this a fuck up. But no, he said the reason he wanted to make Vinland Saga is that he thought it was an interesting idea for a story to have a story about violence and promoting how bad war and violence is, and setting that in the Viking era.
Why did he make it so cool?
That's the problem. Is that season 1 is so badass, and then season 2 feels like such a departure. In a sense of like, when is that gonna happen?
Every time I see that log throwing guy, what's the big one?
Thorkel.
Every time I see him, I'm like, oh, thank God. All right, let's get some violence in here.
And like he told me that he was very, very worried going into like part 2, because in order to establish this message, he needed to establish a world where violence was glorified. And then what he wanted to do was establish his world of glorified violence and kind of break down why that's bad and why we should see another angle to that. And one of his biggest worries is that he did a bit too good of a job with that, because everyone really, really loved the first part.
The message definitely went over a lot of people's heads.
I thought the message was like, violence is sick. That's what I thought.
I thought the message
Vikings
was violence
badass.
is okay if you're Welsh.
As long as you're a Viking, it's okay.
Yeah, you love that. It's like the best Welsh representation ever.
He's the only representation we got in anything.
Exactly.
So sick.
You know what he called Askeladd?
You said cute, right?
He said cute.
Yeah,
he said Askeladd was my favorite character, even though it was like very hard for him to pick. Yeah. And I was like, oh, why'd you like Askeladd? And he was like, oh, kawaii. And I was like, what?
I mean, he is cute. He is a cute motherfucker. He is. I see it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, I asked him, where did you get your inspiration for your story? Are you trying to say anything, you know, are you trying to, how did you get the ideas for what you wanted to portray in his story? And he basically just said, sometimes I just have thoughts and ideas and emotions that I want to convey through the story. And I find the best way with characters and with the world to basically convey my thoughts and emotions. And so I don't know how deeply he thinks into the political ideas, but I think at the core, he has these emotions that he wants to put on the page. And so finds the best way to get the moving parts to like portray that.
I don't even think he's like ideologically Marxist or anything like that. I just I think it's like very human to recognize that injustice. So it totally still makes sense. But I mean, it's at the heart of that kind of politics.
Right. Yeah, I think talking to him, he is a very human, like at a core, he tries to tell very human stories, and he tries to put that in everything he does.
Well, I would argue that's what makes some of the best stories in manga and anime, right? It's like when you're trying to show that like very human side of like, you know, through emotions and, you know, physical violence and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, it's not just like a bunch of people killing each other. There's like some message there, and, you know, depending on who you ask, you know, they get the message more than others. Obviously, Hassan has like fucking nailed it.
But I love it.
Yeah, but like I think I think some of the best authors, especially in the manga world, are able to kind of, you know, try and show both sides of it, where it's like you can think of it as shallowly as possible or as deeply as possible, and it's still just as enjoyable.